Deixa a janela do sorriso aberta. Coisa boa, boa, coisa desperta. Canta, caia, caia, nos liberta. Caia, caia. Deixa a janela do sorriso aberta. Coisa boa, boa, coisa desperta.
All right. Awesome. Well, hi, everybody. Welcome to Plant a Good Seed on Spiritual Saturdays on IBM TV. Hey, Mark.
Hey, how you doing? That was some
Good.
Start everything off with. I'm here to drop on out of here and let you bring your millennials on, but then I'll be back in a little bit. But I just wanted to pop in and say hello and get ready to bring them.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We'll see you soon.
Yeah.
There's Katie.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm great.
There's Shelby.
Hi.
And Kiernan should be coming soon. There she is. Awesome. Awesome. Thank you guys so much for being here. So thrilled that you guys are joining us today. And I've got a real brief meditation, just a 3-breath meditation, if you guys are up for it.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. So all you have to do, put your feet flat on the floor if you can. You want to lift your head to the sky to lengthen your backbone as much as possible. Okay? And relax and close your eyes. So let's take a good inhale into our lungs. Let's see how much air we can get into our lungs, and we want to fill it up. Fill it up, fill it up. And now we want to exhale and release societal constructs, who society thinks you are and who you think society thinks you are. Let it go. Let's take another inhale. Inhale fully. Fill up your lungs. Press against those lymphatic ducts, front, sides, and rear. Now let's exhale. Let's release the ego, the sense of self, and desires of the ego. Let it all go. No needed here. Final inhale. Let's inhale love and light. Connect to the divine spark. Exhale any remaining negativity, any fear, and any lingering doubts. Now let's step into our power. Let's step into our light. Namaste.
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 All right. So releasing everything that society thinks we are, right, Kiernan? Who am I today?
Who am I? I'm neon today. I got that. I got the neon eyeshadow. Less professional.
Wonderful. Let's start. If we could just share with folks that may be watching a little bit about who you are, who you think you are, if you don't mind. Kiernan, you want to start?
Sure. I guess we'll have to narrow it down. Today, I think I am a creative individual. I, in my real life, work at backstage at live theater. I'm a stage technician. I just do a lot of creative nonsense. And yeah, I just like to, live things and try to figure out who I am in the moment, because it changes on a day-to-day basis for crazy theater people like myself.
That's awesome, and awesome to tell people that you're the one that created that artwork about the future is stupid. Is that right?
It's actually just there on my wall.
Fantastic. So can you tell us just a little bit before we go to Katie and Shelby, a little bit about what you were thinking when you made that?
My future is stupid. I suffer with a lot of anxiety and things. And so I tend to catastrophize, let things spiral out. So if I start to worry about something and it starts to agitate me, I'm like, hold on, the future is stupid. You know, nothing is as big a deal as we want to make it up to be in our heads. So it's just everything's cool because, you know, the future is stupid. Nothing's as big a deal as you want to believe it is.
Right, right. And that shows us, you know, that words being labels have power. So some people, when they hear future stupid, they're like, that's stupid, right? But you use that word more of, we don't know what the future's bringing. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So why are we going to stress about it? Let's live and enjoy today. Right?
Exactly. When my mom saw it, she was like, "Oh no, but the future's great." And I was like, "Yeah, that's what I mean by that. The future's great. It's going to be whatever because it's stupid."
Right. Stupid to get caught up in all that stress and all the crap, right?
Exactly.
Attachments and what we think we want and all that other kind of business. That's awesome. Katie, let's introduce the world to Katie Mullaney.
Hello. Right now, I feel like I am also a creative individual. It's like a little bit of a weird time for me because I got laid off. But I'm like, you know, that doesn't impact like who I see myself as. Like, I know that I'm still that person, even though I'm not on a payroll for it right now. But to kind of make up for that, and it's maybe even bringing a little bit more value into my life, is I've got other side projects going on that are keeping me busy and just kind of giving me an outlet and helping other people. So I feel like that's where I'm getting like my, you know, sense of power and happiness right now.
From helping other people and connecting in. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And incidentally, for anybody that's watching, Katie was my son's babysitter years ago. And she came into my life at a certain time. And I think that I came into her life at a certain time. And she just has always really impressed me with her sense of work and her sense of truth, because she's always a seeker for what things mean and what are we going to do about it, right? And we got to move, we got to get the work done, we got to make the money so that we can have what we need. So I've always been very impressed by you, Katie. And anytime anybody says anything negative about millennials, I'm like, you know, come on now, you must not have met Katie. And now they're going to meet Katie and Shelby and Kieran. So we'll have a good idea of what's going on. So Miss Shelby, what's up with you today?
Hi. So yeah, I'm Shelby. I am turning 29 this year. So I am definitely in that millennial category. And at the moment I'm working in applied behavior analysis, which is a form of behavior therapy. But my background and experience it runs the gambit in childcare, education, extracurricular event and program planning, mostly with like kids and teens.
Got you. Awesome. Awesome. And, you know, it is funny, you know, Katie, you bring up does my job define me? When we answer, you know, who are we? Tell a little bit about yourself. So many of us are used to saying, well, I work here, or I do this, or I do that. But when you take that, you know, the thing that you do for money out of the picture, then what's left? Then who really are you, right?
Yeah.
So let's go into that, Ms. Shelby. So now that we know a little bit about who you guys are, let's talk about who you really are. So Shelby, you've done some studies, right, on behavior and fitting into the generational identity, right?
Yeah, so when I was in college, my minor was psychology, but my major involved kind of a little bit of everything. My major was recreation management, but I was focused on outdoor experiential education. I was focused on working with kids and teens or very specific populations of people. So a lot of that is learning about who you're serving, what is your program geared towards, or what type of people are you working with. And when you look at that from a psychological standpoint, I got really interested in the developmental side of things. In developmental psychology, there are several existing theories that we've all kind of accepted hold some aspect of truth to them. And at this point, psychology kind of picks and chooses and pulls from each to support their theories and findings. But like Jung and Freud focused on these developmental milestones for when you're growing, the way your brain and your personality gets shaped. They kind of defined it by these different developmental stages. And what we're finding when we put that into real world applications and we keep looking into it more as time goes on, that not only is that the nature side of things and how the human mind develops, but also the nurture element and how that's impacted by a generational thing. And we're seeing that a lot now with terms like boomer, millennial, Generation Z, what happened to Generation X, who even is Generation X, like where do you fall? I wasn't a millennial when I was born because the millennium hasn't happened yet, but all of a sudden a 91 baby is a millennial. So I did a lot of research in that area and how we market to different age groups, how age groups like to define themselves, whether they identify more by their actual age or their cultural age. There are the idea of millennials who are raised by the very tail end of the boomer generation versus millennials that were raised by the beginning of Generation X, those like 80s parents. And there's just a lot of differences there in ways that we define ourselves by being, like an elder millennial. Like I remember not having the internet, not having cell phones. And that's so not the case for the younger end of millennials. So yeah, it's just this really interesting world and way of looking at things is not only who we think we are, but like the science behind it, the way your brain makes you view yourself and the world around you at any given developmental stage.
Yeah, I had a friend that was in pre-med, and he did this paper on what brains. It's interesting on the brain science itself, right? Because then we have the culture and we have what we think, what the ego says we need to do, and we want to fit in and all this other kind of stuff. But his point, it's always fascinated me that our brains are really computers, and basically any new stimuli, they immediately want to put into a bucket, right? To simplify it and to make it so that we can handle all the stimuli, it's just filing stuff away the whole day. And it's interesting, the identity with the generation and the descriptions of the generation, and even more so what you said about you weren't a millennial when you were born, but then you became a millennial. So your identity behind, who you're with and who you follow. And if any of those, like when people say, for example, a couple things that I've heard them say recently, millennials are too sensitive, right?
Yeah.
So identify with that.
I feel like most of the millennials I know are some of the most callous people I know. Like dark humor is where it's at.
Morbid humor is how we get through life. I think what irks me about that is when people want to call millennials sensitive, it's like, first off, our humor would offend you, the way that we joke and laugh about things that you don't find funny. And secondly, it's not that we're sensitive, it's that we like care about the way other people feel. And we're also not afraid to speak up and call things out. And so people portray that as being sensitive. And in my mind, I'm like, no, I'm just not taking any of your garbage today. Like I'm very much not sensitive.
Well, that's so interesting. And, I don't mean to go in a totally different tangent, but, a lot of times I'm just going to go ahead and go there. The patriarchy never wants to deal with feelings. So if you bring up, a lot of times, depending on what circle you're in, but if you bring up compassion, if you bring up understanding, depending on who's in charge, right? Depending on who's in charge, that's not welcome here. Why are you talking about that? That doesn't matter because ROI, baby, return on investment. Feelings don't matter. But what we find is, from so many years of being callous and not caring about other people, that's part of how we're in the situation we're in today, you think?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's up to you guys. Come on now.
Well, I think touching on what you're saying, it is funny in a like not haha funny kind of way, but in a dark, twisted humor kind of way. It's funny that, speaking from my personal experience, I think parents and people from previous generations love to talk about how much more difficult they had it, how much worse their parents were.
I did go uphill both ways, damn it.
Right? I was just in the mountains.
In the snow.
I walked in the snow uphill both ways. I did it. I get it. Like, everyone wants to harp on how much worse their experience was. But then my rebuttal to that has always kind of been just confusion of, so why would you want the same for me? Like, if that sucked, why wouldn't you be happy that I have no reference of like framework for that because I've just never experienced it? That should be a plus. We should be thrilled that like I can't fathom picking tobacco when I was 13 years old to help my family make ends meet because that's a crime against children. Like we've made progress. Like that should be a good thing, not something you lecture me about at Thanksgiving. Like
that. Mark, were you trying to?
Yeah, I was going to just chime in. I was listening to y'all's discussion, fascinating discussion, all of you ladies here and everything. But I just wanted to say that I was really enjoying some of the conversation. I was reflecting on my own life and everything because I'm actually the old man in the crowd, 58, no kids and things of that nature, but definitely the old man in the crowd. But I was thinking about how even my dad, who's 80 years old, when his mother, my grandmother was living, they oftentimes had generational conflicts. Because like I
Yep.
said, it was during the civil rights era. And so dad was very much of a civil rights activist, was very much that kind of attitude of going and shaking up the trees a little bit and making changes, whereas grandma was a little bit more on the let's keep things even and not try to rock the boat kind of attitude, even though she was a radical woman herself. I mean, she set up the first African American library there in Raleigh. So she did have some radical nature
Wow.
in her own self, because the Richard B. Harrison Library is actually, she was the creator of that library there in Raleigh. So definitely she was
Fabulous.
radical in her own way, but at the same time, she didn't necessarily want to hit the streets the way Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and other folks were doing, which was more like what my dad was trying to do. So I've seen that. And the other thing that I was just curious to see about what the ladies think about this and everything is when I talk to folks that are younger, and I've got two nephews that are not quite y'all's age, they're actually much younger. They're like 11 and 12 and things of that nature. When I talk to them, or you just talk to young folks, and I try to talk to folks of all ages. That's just the way I was raised. I try to be very much about supporting people of all races, all ages, all creeds, just all of that kind of stuff. But when I talk to the younger folks, I sometimes get the feeling that y'all are not, the old fashioned flavor was that I was the relic in the camp, meaning that I didn't have any kids. Whereas I felt that a lot of the young ladies and the young men were not necessarily trying to rush into parenthood because, one, I get the feeling that a lot of y'all are not sure that what the world is going to look like or whether we're even going to have a world. So because of that, y'all are like, I don't know if I want to bring people into this. So I want to know what your thoughts are about that, because I do know that sometimes when I talk to folks, they're like, no, I don't mind getting having relationships, having emotional connections, but I'm really not trying to bring a younger one into this world because, as Tish just alluded to, the world is kind of messed up right now, and a lot of times folks don't want to bring folks into that world. So I'm just wondering what your thoughts were on that.
I can speak a bit. So I'm turning 26 next month, and it's just very surreal. Like in my head, like seeing all the people that I know having kids at like 19, 20, I'm like, okay, like it's not an impossibility that you can't handle it. Like I believe in them, but for myself, I'm like, and I know it'll never happen this way, and I'm sure Tish, you can speak on that too, but like knowing that like all the pieces are in place, like
You're right. No, it won't.
I have a full-time job. There's like stability in my life. I've got a partner with stability, which I have that, but it's like the other things are, especially in this time, are kind of falling apart. And like my career just went down the drain for now, but it's okay.
Thanks, COVID.
So I'm like, thank God I didn't get pregnant before I got my job and then got laid off. Like that would have, I wouldn't even know what to do with myself. And I'm like, how late can I push it to have kids? Because I want to have a family. I want to have a big family, actually, but I don't want to rush into it and then not be able to like.
Yeah, I think, and we all kind of talked about parts of this when we were chatting last night, talking about how things were going to run today, where there's this idea that our parents had things figured out to a certain extent, but like looking back and talking to them now, and she's laughing as a parent. She's like, no, that was never ever the case. That was never a thing that happened. But in my mind, like my mom and dad decided that they wanted to have a baby, and then they had me, and like they had it all figured out. And talking to them now, looking back, I'm like, no, they were broke. My dad was young and enlisted. They hadn't been married very long. Like they didn't have it figured out. And so I think there's like an amount of forgiveness you have to give yourself to like not be in the perfect spot and just decide like it's never going to feel perfect. Like it's never going to be like I feel completely confident in my ability to bring a human being into the world right now. Like who feels that way? Who has ever had that level of self-assuredness or like I could handle, creating life. That's fine. So I think that's part of where a lot of us are stuck right now is that like mental hurdle of like, I just have to do it. Like I just have to accept that there's never a perfect time and pick the time that works best for me. And it's probably not now. It's not now. I definitely know it's not now. I don't know when it's going to be, but it's not now.
I feel like also with our generation, there's kind of a more realization of like, climate change and the like state of the world as a whole. Like, in the 80s, there was this denial. There was hairspray's not doing anything. In the 90s, they were like, okay, it might be doing something. So like hold on. And then by, the time we were all like coming of age, more or less, we were like, oh, so the environment is like ruined. So like we're destroying this planet. Elon Musk better get on that going to Mars thing, because this may not go well. So it's like, do I really want to have a kid that's going to take up more resources, and rather than, just try to like save the planet first, or, personally like go towards like adopting kids that already exist who need families and need help, rather than making a new person. Like, I'd love to have a person that looks like me, but like people already exist and I like them.
Yeah, and they need homes, and that's also a whole extra level of preparedness if you're going to look at adoption and you want to do like the eco-friendly thing of adoption. I don't know, is that how they're marketing it, that it's eco-friendly to adopt?
Eco-friendly. You're not making more people. We have enough of them.
But yeah, it's like that's a whole other realm of responsibility and preparedness and issues you have to be braced for, that like that's another thing keeping kids around. Kids, we're adults. That's another thing keeping people my age kind of on that cusp of I'm maybe ready to start a family and settle down, but wow, everything's already weird right now. The idea of adding a brand new human into my weirdness it's too much. It's too much.
If I can add, I'm sorry, Tish, but what do y'all young people think about the concept of like just the independence? Because so many of the young people that I know, whether they're in their 20s or their 30s, they're fiercely independent, which I love, and all of that stuff. But then at the same time, it gets in the way, because then that independence is why some of y'all, and I'm not saying it's y'all because I don't know y'all, but don't want to wear a mask and you want to get to hit the clubs and things of that nature. So I was just wondering how y'all take that when you hear the independence, because oftentimes when we hear this independence argument, it's the young people that are making it, because y'all are oftentimes the ones that are hitting the clubs and the bars and the things of that nature, and y'all don't necessarily want to wear the mask or do some other things that might be considered independent. Because I do think that a lot of young people are tremendously independent, or trying to be more and more independent. Y'all have been in your parents' house forever. I know that's even like I have my brother's girlfriend is going to East Carolina, and I know she's just looking forward to going to East Carolina because she won't be with her mother and she won't be around my brother and that whole relationship. Not that she doesn't love them, but she's ready to go have some independence and have some freedom of her own. So I just wondered what your thoughts were of getting that independence in your 20s.
Well, girls, if you don't mind, I'll pop in really quick because I think we can all speak to this one in a big way, just from what I know. We've all known each other since at least high school. I think Kiernan and Katie go even further back. But as someone who was independent and doing like adult responsibility things at a younger age, I think the independence factor for me was a lot more of, it's not that I don't want to wear a mask. I wear masks everywhere. I'm very much respectful of that. It's something we're doing as a community to keep each other safe. So that's not something I can really speak to. But the idea that independence is this big motivating factor for younger people, or that we're reaching it higher, I think that's just a weird conception that's in the news and what people want you to think about millennials, because I know we run the gambit. I have friends whose parents have paid for everything up until college, and then right after college, they jumped into their 40-hour-a-week office job, and they're doing like the cookie cutter lifestyle, and they're millennials, and they're fitting into their parents' version of like what that 40-hour work week lifestyle is supposed to look like. And they're getting married on track, and they're having kids on track, and their life is looking like a storybook. But I know plenty of other millennials that still live at home and don't really have a job or want a job. I know millennials that have had 4 jobs since high school. I know millennials that have changed careers 4 times since college, but are still like thriving in their industry. Hello. So I think it's just this, again, going back to people are so eager to label and have their brain be able to just put you in this box where it's like, well, millennials are independent and they just don't want to be told what to do. It is something because we're all reaching this adulthood where I'm 28 years old and I have male family members that want to police what I'm posting on my Facebook. Yeah. And that is kind of that point where like you no longer pay any of my bills. I don't really see you except for family gatherings, and I love and support you, and I'm not going to intentionally cause harm, and I'll apologize when I'm wrong, but also like, you're gonna censor my social media posts? I'm a grown woman. I've been married. Like, I understand the difficulty of like parents or the older generation stepping back and accepting that we're adults, because I think a lot of times we forget that we're adults and have like that realization a couple times a day where you like look around and you're like, oh, I'm in charge. Okay, that's right. Yep, I'm in charge. So I just have a hard time with people who think that millennial can be so easily defined when it's you know, it's a 15-year span of these people, I think, roughly. And it's all different walks of life. So you want to define a millennial. Like, you can base that off of the life events we've all experienced together. We all have living memory of 9/11 happening. We all have living memory of mass shootings. Like, those are things that bond us. But the age-based life experiences, based on like, well, you're 28, so you must have kids, so you must have done this, or like, well, you're financially independent, so you must be at this stage in your career. It doesn't apply to us. We're too broad of a spectrum.
Well, see, that's what's so exciting to me about the millennials and about Generation Z, because you guys are not, you're not sitting in a box. You're not letting yourself be in a box.
I mean, we are, because quarantine.
Yeah, they're in the box. That quarantine gets in the way. I'm going to let Tish take over, but I was just going to make a quick observation to the young lady. I believe her name is Shelby, that was just speaking and everything. But I have bad news for you. That whole monitoring your social constraints, the Facebook and all of that, it gets monitored when you're an adult as well. Because my younger brother will sometimes tell me that I'm posting way too much about this or that personal thing or this or that thing about my life. And he will come and I remember one time he told me something that was a family matter. And the first thing he said was, the last thing I want you to do is post this on your Facebook. Whatever you do, don't post it. I'm not ready to announce it, so don't post it. So that happens even when you're in your late 50s. So there are those constraints that exist there as well. So I just followed his advice, and I haven't posted that announcement yet until I get the go ahead. And he's like, "It's okay." So whatever that announcement is, y'all can guess. But I'm not gonna post it until it's a known fact. And then the other thing I was going to say just before jumping off, I may pop back on, but I let Tish take over and everything, was that y'all were talking about the computer and the laptop and all those small computers and the phones. I remember, and Tish may remember this as well, when the computer took up the whole room. And it was like really fascinating to see the computer take up like a whole room, because we thought that it was like this wonderful new invention, but it literally was like the room in your college or something like that. So we built this lovely laptop, which I'm using right now. I love the convenience of it, and glad that millennials and others are coming up with new inventions like this on a regular basis to make our lives easier. But I do remember when it was a monstrosity.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of things like that. We've definitely gone in, I think, great direction. But then, I always bring ethics into it, like with the 5G and what it does to our brains and all of this other kind of business. And the fact that, that is a piece of, I guess, old generation or whatever. But it's also a piece for me of being an energy worker, is being in person, right? Yeah. And that connection, because you really, when you're in person, you really can feel somebody else's energy. Hopefully people are feeling y'all's beautiful energy today, but there is something about being in person that technology can take away.
But oh yeah. Now, because if we didn't have, like, I'm thinking back to like the 1918 Spanish flu.
Oh,
like
wow.
People, like, first of all, they didn't really have an understanding of what a virus even was, but had they had that knowledge and known to be like, all right, everybody separate. To the extent that we are trying to do today, like, I can't imagine how lonely they would feel. So I'm really grateful we have this here to kind of connect us even virtually.
But you say, but that's in our definition of lonely. Like, if we lived in 1918, we wouldn't know about TV. We wouldn't know what other people are doing on the other side of the world. We wouldn't know what somebody's wearing. We wouldn't know what kind of shoes they have. It's just,
Also, think how big your family was at that point in time. Like, everyone, like, the average number of kids was like 5.
Yeah.
So what is lonely when you're one of 5 kids,
Yeah. And like single family homes weren't a thing. You lived with, like, not just your family, but your sister and her husband and their kids were either in the same building, or like your family was on the block if you're in a more like urban setting. So I think just the way our society is structured has made this more interesting. And I mean, not to keep coming back to the same point, but we've become so diversified and so spread out that the way COVID is affecting people's lifestyles is so drastically different. My aunt lives in Chicago, and so she's like right in downtown Chicago in the old paper mill district. And hi, Shannon. And she came down to North Carolina, and we went into a rural part of the state, just very small family. We stayed socially distant. We wore masks if we went and did anything. We were conscious of like our impact that we were having, but we really wanted to see each other. And she noted just the difference in how North Carolina was handling it in this more rural area, where it was like maybe 50% of the people we saw were wearing masks and no one on the beach was socially distant. Like kids were meeting from different groups and playing together, which is heartwarming and awesome. And that's what summer at the coast is to me, but also like, no, there is still a global pandemic happening, people. Like,
we can love each other from a distance.
Right? This is my square on the beach. You go to your square on the beach. But yeah.
Totally right.
COVID.
And I mean, you know, and I think COVID's definitely something that has, you know, Mark asked about millennials and being safe, but I'll tell you, I have people in my generation that are fighting it tooth and nail, making you know, all kinds of Facebook pages, and some of them even like a friend talking to me about another friend. Oh, she's gone off the deep end. I can't even be friends with her anymore. Cause you know, it's just, some people have jumped on it so hard because they feel either way, right? Like wear your mask or don't wear your mask. And it's really like dividing people, which is really amazing to me. So I don't think the wear a mask, don't wear a mask, I don't see it as a generational thing. I think about it as, you know, an individual thing. And I haven't yet been able to attach these kind of people are the ones that do, because I have liberal friends that do and liberal friends that don't. You know, I've got conservative friends that do and conservative friends that don't. Old that do.
Yeah, it's kind of across the board. And it's, I forget who had this article. I have to go back and look for it because it was really well written. But they were pointing out how part of how quarantine is like a double-edged sword is that if you're staying inside and you are isolating, like that is the best thing to do as far as like flattening the curve. However, if you're just online and doing things virtually and you're not having that human contact, that I mean, our generation saw it with MySpace, and what was that stupid, really toxic one where you could just anonymously send people things, Formspring or something, and it got so it gets so toxic because you're doing all of these interactions from behind.
I blocked that out. Oh yeah,
because it was awful.
So bad.
Because you're hidden behind this screen and there are no real consequences. I mean, people are kind of wising up to it and like exposing people who are like racist or problematic online, but for a large part of the population, it's totally fine for them to hop on their Facebook and post really ignorant things or post really divisive statements about masks or no masks or Trump or not Trump or whatever you want to delve into.
You bring up such a great point. It's about, all right, so we're talking about identity, right? Who am I? But then your point in that other platform is when people don't have a label, right? Then they do all kinds of stuff, right? Which brings up the whole, you know, is our identity just a front? To how many of us is our identity a front? Can we be the real self, right? What's in ourselves, you know? And that's where if somebody like throws up negativity, especially behind anonymity, then they are not, I want to say, rectified in their soul. You know what I mean? Then they're living a dual life. They don't know who they are. You know, and they really need to figure out, not to once again put my energy healer hat on, but they need to figure out, you know, where that negativity, get rid of it, you know, and let the positivity in, because that's how we're going to move forward as a species, you know, as a race.
It can't be good for the human mind to have that level of cognitive dissonance happening where your brain is having to separate like who you are portraying yourself as online or to a certain group of friends or whatever versus your actual thoughts and feelings. Like that level of cognitive dissonance is unhealthy and it's going to manifest like your mental health will manifest in your physical health. Every doctor specialist I've talked to will tell you that like your anxiety, your depression, your anger, or like temper issues, those are all going to find ways to come out physically. If you're just doing the whole, like, I'm going to ignore it, it'll be fine thing. Like that's been proven to be false. It will not be fine.
I'm living proof of it because I burned out. I was in a career for 25 years. And I had originally just gotten into the career because I wanted to stop I was in graduate school, wanted to stop borrowing money off the government. So I went into the career and it was great. Met a lot of great people, learned a lot of things, accomplished a lot of stuff, but it wasn't my true self. And you know what I mean? So it created that cognitive dissonance, even though I was still the same Tish, no matter whether I was at work or at home. But it was a different kind of animal. What happened there?
Oh, we lost one of them. I don't know. Maybe
Shelby.
she'll pop back in, but I don't know because she just disappeared. So it might have been something with her phone. But to the Tish and to the other two ladies as well, I'm just curious what you talk about identity in terms of what Tish was just talking about, because I'm seeing more and more of people being open to identifying themselves no matter what their identity is, whether it's around orientation, around like transgender or bi or whatever else, or whether it's around racial identity or ethnic identity. And it seems to me that there seems to be more openness among some of the younger generation to accepting that, whereas some of the older ones were a little bit more closed-minded and things of that nature. So I'm just wondering what your thoughts were on that, because even in other cultures, I have some friends, some from here in our IBM family and some from other places that are from other parts of the world. And even they are starting to tackle like women's rights and being very vocal about it, even if they're in non-women rights kind of societies, like they might be coming out of Pakistan or Iran or some of these societies that have been very repressive to women. But now they are going to come out and share their voice, even in those societies. I have a friend, Sarah Fatima, who's a comedian, and she's very much adamant about being open about that. And there's another young lady who's actually a dentist in Pakistan, if I remember correctly. But she's, even though that's a very male-dominated society, she's very much about putting her foot down that she's not tolerating it anymore.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I feel like with our generation, there's shame isn't the right word, but there's casually a lack of shame. It's like, this is who I am, and I'm not going to be ashamed of that. You're not going to tell me that I should be, ashamed of it. I myself, I am bisexual. And when I came out to my mom, there was that whole vibe of, she's an incredibly accepting person and she let me be my own person. And I'm very lucky in that respect because she let me do all the weird things and go into my strange creative field. But even her, when, it's a phase basically of, you're just confused. And there is an aspect to like, okay, well, maybe I'll just like keep it to myself and like process inward before I continue to tell people or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then I quickly decided like, no, like that's not worth the energy to repress something, to pretend that I'm someone else. I want to also spread to other people that it's exactly perfectly fine to be who you are. Yes. I will be my out and proud and crazy obnoxious self if that'll help, some 12-year-old girl sitting at home going like, I don't think I feel different. I feel wrong. If seeing me is going to make her go, yes, I want to be different and weird and wrong in the best way, then sure, I live for that. I want the next generation. I want, just literally everyone else to feel just as comfortable being a strange individual as I am. Like, strange doesn't have to be the bad word that we've kind of been brought up to feel like it is. Like, it was bad to be weird, but I do not agree whatsoever. Like, weird is the thing to my tattoo. Indeed, stay weird, because it is the words to live by,
Well, it's so awesome because what you're talking about, shame, right? So our society, somewhere, somehow we get the shame. We think we need to be a certain way. That's identity, right? And then we think that's who we need to portray. That's not at all. The stay weird, again, it's the choice of words, right? Like the future is stupid. So automatically people are like, oh, I'm not sure about that. But really what that means is that the future is uncertain. So love it, embrace it, lean in, right?
And lean in, exactly.
Exactly. And then the same thing here, right? Like, you're using the word weird, and there's some people that may have negative connotations to weird, but really what you're saying is be yourself. Because you know what? We're all weird. if we let it out, we're all weird because we're all special and unique, and other people can't understand it always. And again, that's part of what I love about millennials and Generation Z is you guys be who you are. If you want blue hair, have blue hair. You want to wear combat boots when it's 90 degrees, wear combat boots. You know?
All for me.
All of those.
That is me. You're describing me so well. Yes. I wear flower crowns and combat boots with my blue hair.
Flower crowns. Love it.
Yeah.
There's a full drawer in my dresser full of flower crowns.
Oh my gosh, I got to come see you and we can wear flower crowns.
Yes. I'm working on making some.
I don't think I want the flower crowns, but it's still cool that y'all have the flower crowns.
It'd be cute if you had one on there, Mark.
I don't know, man. Yeah, we get like some big like chrysanthemums. It could be a good look.
You can rock it.
But you know, Tish, what you were just saying is, I was just thinking about one of my favorite shows, and it was a corny show, but it was set in the 50s, and the lead character was all about being different. And I'm going to date myself again and everything. But, you know, there used to be this show. It still airs on reruns for those of you that are watching that are millennials and Generation Z and the other things. It was called Happy Days. And Fonz was totally out of the difference. He was totally different.
Hey.
Pinky Toscadero, I think was her name. His Lady Love was totally different. So these were folks that I think many of the millennials could relate to. I'm thinking that even you that has the flower crowns, I'm thinking that you could hang with like Fonz and Pinky.
I loved the Fonz. Like he was my soulmate from a young age. We had like 3 channels of cable my entire childhood. I loved Happy Days, and Law and Order was my favorite show at 7 years old as a strange person.
That explains much about you.
It really does, right? It really does. But yeah, the Fonz was where it was at.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, just exactly. I grew up a slightly different life than a lot of my peers. So I feel like, because I mean, like immediately behind me, we've got, you know, James Dean and John Lennon, and then Janis Joplin is my hero. And so I grew up that we kind of talked about this last night in our, you know, pre-podcast talk, but about like the difference in millennials being raised by like the Gen Xers or the boomers, where boomers seemed to be a bit more like the helicopter parents, and my parents were Gen X and they had very helicopter parents, and were, you know, my mom went to Catholic school K through 12. So she was very controlled, and her stance to it, you know, when it came to parenting was like, just do what you want, you know, like if the more they were controlled, my mom at least, the more she rebelled and did the wild, crazy things. So she was like, if you tell me about your rebellion, if we dye your hair together, if, you know, then you're not going to go be a crazy person. I, in fact, call my mom Susan, which confuses a lot of people, not out of rebellion, just because like it's her first name and it's really hard to find your mom in a grocery store when you yell mom. It is much easier to find her when you yell Susan.
Ladies pop out like
exactly. At most I get like 3 Susans, but you know, I'll find mine.
Polo.
Exactly.
Oh my God, yes.
But you know, so I had the chill parent of just, you know, you do what you want. We latchkey kid there. So, you know, it was go home. We have just like the 3 basic cable channels. Don't tell your friends you watched Law and Order, and then just, you know, make dinner for yourself and be a person. Like you do you, and then just like don't burn the house down. Those were the rules.
Easy rules.
which I guess a lot of other like people my age didn't. They had the, but the, you know, you can only watch these shows. We have like the parenting locks on all the channels
my
and things
TV
like
was
that.
Always parental control blocked. Like I wasn't allowed to have video games. I wasn't allowed to watch like what was the Nickelodeon's teenage channel that they had for a while, The Inn or whatever, that had like Degrassi and everything on it. Like that was blocked. Yeah, it was
Degrassi.
Yeah, my mom would like not let me watch the Amanda Show when I was a little kid. Like stuff that was pretty innocent, but she just found it obnoxious, like was banned in our household. I was very sheltered up until about 16. And then I wasn't.
And then we met. I wonder if those 2 things coincide.
Interesting.
So we've only got about another 15, 16 minutes. So Kiernan, I want to know what's in your purse today.
Oh my gosh.
Oh goodness. Okay.
Because the point, just explain a little bit about your purse, if you would, Kiernan, about your identity.
I'm
my
placing
identity
a
related
bet.
to my purse.
$5 says that there is some sort of hardware in her purse. I'm placing my bet now.
Ooh,
$5
we'll
says
see.
you have hardware in your bag.
So, do you want to place a bet on what's in my bag too, Basil, or too, Mulaney?
I guarantee you've got like a Gerber tool of some kind, maybe a hammer.
Okay.
I think there's
So my brother was.
I'm gonna play it safe. Is there like some old music in your bag somewhere? That's my bet. That there's some old music in there somewhere.
I think just the music would be on my phone. But just for a little backstory on the bag, my brother was a Boy Scout, as brothers often are. And my mom did not, as addressed with the latchkey thing, she did not want to have to pay for the babysitter while he went to Boy Scout meetings. So I was an honorary Boy Scout. And the tying knots did not really stay with me too well.
I didn't get those
but
either.
the be prepared over, words, mantra, be prepared, has stuck with me forever. So this purse contains enough to possibly save me from the apocalypse. I've often joked a little seriously that if I were to be trapped on, the desert island situation with this bag, I could live at least a month. Like, I've got a Cliff Bar in here.
Yeah.
I have the tools. I know how to make a snare. That I remembered from Boy Scouts. So, like, I can start, like, the hunting and fishing and whatnot. Yeah. I could live in the jungle with this purse alone.
They would find you. Like, you would have enough time to be found.
So we're gonna blind dive into the bag and see what we pull out first.
Don't hurt yourself.
We have that is a threat though. Okay, so first we have
the blind pull.
This is full of bobby pins and hair ties. This is just a bag of stickers, some gummies, some fruit snacks, some paintbrushes. This is a rainbow thing full of nausea medication. Amazing.
Interesting. But part of the point,
at least a dozen lighters, an entire first aid kit. This is my first aid kit.
It's cute.
And then tiny bag of makeup. I got stopped. I travel a lot. I'm always in the airport. So I, occasionally they get stopped because like random pulls to like look through my bag. And the last time I was in Scotland and she just started going through it, especially I'm in the airport. I have more stuff than usual, which is really saying something. That bag weighs 6 pounds. So she starts pulling things out and she goes, this. And I was like, oh, that's first aid stuff. And then the next thing is she goes, oh, that's, full of cords. It's my phone cord, my external battery. And then, oh, that one's full of, and she just looked at me and sighed and put it all back in and was like, I don't have time for this.
They don't pay me enough.
Japan took all 13 lighters that I keep in my purse, which was very upsetting to me. And 13 feels unreasonable number, but it's because the purse is so big. I need to dive in at a moment's notice and find a lighter.
Yeah.
Now,
because I'm one of the few people that still smoke and not vape.
It's interesting about your purse. You were saying that every day, like especially when you worked in theater, every day you have to ask yourself, who am I? Because you play different roles, and oftentimes the clue is in your bag. Is it a hammer? Is it a wrench? What's in the bag today? So what's your identity today, right? What's the tools
today? I've just got a lot of paintbrushes going on because we're going to be painting some furniture later, and I've got lots of hair sticks to hold this is a tiny katana in there today. So we're on a very artsy vibe recently. We're not on a construction. There are no wrenches in my purse. I apparently took all the multi-tools out. All I have is a spark flint, for setting fires in the woods, which I don't, there's no reason to have it, but I'm convinced that the second I take it out is the day I'm gonna need it. So it cannot be removed. There is still a spark flint in my bag.
13 lighters and a spark flint? You are a fire sign if I've ever seen one.
I was gonna say, can we maybe reach out and see if there's like unprecedented levels of arson happening around Kieran's house or something?
No, that's my go-to over dramatic threat.
Well, see, I was actually going to defend her because what I was thinking is we actually have about to be, we got a major storm that's on its way over here,
yeah.
And there's going to be like the floods and things of that nature. Yep. So then you might need to have the the fire to go with the water and all of that. So see, I was going to try to like make some sort of defense stuff. But
Yeah, I mean,
at this moment,
it doesn't matter who she is.
Lighters.
Yeah, it doesn't matter who she is. It's just that she's prepared today.
Yes.
Is the theme. Yeah.
Yes.
Today, every day, always.
Every day. Sorry, Boy Scout. My bad.
Thank you. I think that's just also, it's kind of a like security blanket situation where even like when I move room to room in my house, the purse still comes with me. I'm like, okay, I'm going to be downstairs. I need to bring the purse because it has all of my things. There's easily a dozen pens, 3 different style of Sharpie, like everything. There's makeup. I had to bring it upstairs. I left downstairs last night. I had to bring it up so I could do my makeup to get on this chat. Like, hold on. How dare the purse be in another room? What's happening? Who am I without my purse?
Oh, man. That is a whole different podcast.
That is a whole different thing. Who am I without my purse?
It is. Your identity is based on a thing, right?
Exactly.
And that's part of really when we evolve, we learn that our identity is not attached to things. It's not attached to positions. It's not attached to house. It's not attached to anything outside of us, right? We go through those phases. We realize because, you know, like, again, when I was in my career, I'm da-da-da. Mm-hmm. No, that's what I was doing with my time to make money for my family.
Right.
You know, that's not who I am. You know what I mean? So the whole idea that we have to have things to define us. And let me ask you guys this. Is that for us to define ourselves, or is that for the outside world to define us?
For us.
For us, yeah.
I think us.
I'm not giving anyone else that power.
I kind of struggle with that. I think that's something that part of our generation really struggles with, and I think, not to harp on it, but it's our reality. COVID is really opening a lot of people's eyes to this idea that, like, I really was just my job, but now that I'm doing it from home, or now that my job is paused, what do I do outside of it? I've dedicated my life to this thing and my hobbies all revolve around it. Or now that I can't access it, who am I and who do I want to be? And when I'm now talking to my friends and we're having these social, who have they thought that I was? Like, what do they think that I'm doing now that I'm not at work? So I think for me, I'm struggling with that balance of who I think I know I am and how my family and friends perceive me. Because I want them to like me and be proud of me, obviously. Like, those are good goals. But also, like, I have to stay true to me. So if those things are diametrically opposed, my family's goals and my goals for happiness, how do you reconcile that? Or like, if your friend group's goals don't align with yours, is it time to make a different friend group? And how do you do that when you're an adult? Because, like, I don't go to school anymore and I don't go into work anymore. I only see my clients. How am I supposed to make friends? How do you make friends as an adult?
I made a friend in real life the other day.
I was so happy.
It was the most surprising thing. I went into Sally Beauty Supplies because I was dyeing my friend's hair green because that's what I do. And the woman at the counter, we were chatting about hair. We were chatting about makeup. And she just said, "You seem really cool. Would you like to be friends?" And obviously I said yes. She printed out her phone number and handed it to me. I handed her my business card, which has my phone number on it. And we just started texting and I made a friend. And that is like the coolest move I have ever seen.
Yay.
She's doing it,
take
everyone.
this girl's
She's
style. That's
it.
what we've got to do. Be my friend Adrian and just ask strangers to be your friend is apparently the way to go, and I'm living for it.
Maybe for any young impressionable listeners, maybe don't ask strangers to be your friend. Maybe
People that you talk to and seem nice.
To be perfectly fair about that, I have a dear friend of mine. They actually called me yesterday, and we have been friends now for about 8 or 9 years. I became friends with them because we shared a TTA bus, for those that are listening from around the world. That's Triangle Transit Authority. And I just happened to see them over there, and I just thought that they were looking kind of depressed and sad and whatever they were going through, and told them that encouraged them, gave them some encouraging words. And me and Nikki are very good friends. Like I said, she's a grandmother and Mother of 4, grandmother of, I've lost track because I think it's like 5 or 6 or something like that. But she's definitely a grandmother of many. But like I said, we've got that friendship. She'll reach out to me or I'll reach out to her, and we became friends. But it was all because, like you met your friend at the counter, we met on TTA and have maintained that kind of connection. Like I said, we will sometimes lose track of the friendship, but then we'll go back and reconnect. And so it's a off again, on again connection, but the friendship is there and will probably be there for life. The best that
Awesome.
I can tell. So
Yeah, those are the best friendships.
Friendships are
on again, off again.
You can find them, but I do agree. You do have to be cautious. You don't want to just be friends with everybody. So you have to find
with crazy
I'm
boys
thinking
on
of
the
like
street with
eager
purple lipstick
13-year-old Shelby. Who was just like,
you
oh my
don't-
god, yeah, friends with everyone. And like, no, she doesn't need to ask strangers to be her friend. She is a target. However, now that you mention that, I do think some of my best friends that I've made as an adult have been those random encounters, and it's been an interesting like learning curve. Is that, you know, like Kieran and I, our encounter that made us friends was just a random moment in probably like a theater rehearsal or something.
High school theater, yes, indeed. That's where I meet everybody.
And
unless we happen to share names.
But we kept seeing each other, so it forced that friendship where, like, we had that initial interaction of, like, okay, you're a cool person. And so the next time I saw you, which was inevitable because it was high school, I knew I wanted to, like, chat with you more. But you don't get that as an adult in real life. You might not see that person again. So do go up to them and be like, hey, like, I've loved our conversation. Or, like, you have this vibe going. I have so many, now that you've mentioned, I'm thinking of, like, all my, like, adult friends that I've made since high school. And most of them, especially the ones that have lasted or have like really awesome connections and conversations and have really like impacted my life, were just random encounters that I was like, you know what? I like you. And then we like stayed in touch.
But you know, as an energy worker, let me add this though, because there's true science behind that. That is your energy feeding off their energy. That's why you can go in a room of 50 people and there's going to be 1, 2, 3, or 4 that for some odd reason you're going to feel attracted to, right? You just, and whether it's male or female, you know, I'm not talking about sexual attraction. I'm just saying, you know, there's people that your energy likes, their energy likes you, right? And then there's people that your energy doesn't like, right? And they don't. And unfortunately, sometimes that, you know, to talk to something you said earlier, Shelby, I mean, sometimes that's your family, you know, or people that you were born into or that you work beside or something, and your energy the whole time is just like, not my tribe, not my tribe.
Yeah, exactly.
But you know, you still got to be polite, and you got to, you know, be able to get along, be compassionate to everyone, even if your energy doesn't jive, right? But you're totally right, Shelby. When that energy, when you feel that for somebody, you have to be like, hey, Mark, how's it going? Good to see you. I'm glad we met.
Yeah, me and Tish have that energy, and we haven't even met. I've got that energy with a lot of other folks, including Ankit, who's one of our producers. Ankit lives in India. I have never met Ankit, but don't know that I ever will. I do a podcast, and me and Dean have never met. We were actually introduced to a mutual friend, so we've never, I mean, we've met through virtual, but we've never physically been in the same space. But I was just really curious. I know we got to wrap up everything, Tish, and everything, but how important is these kind of identity factors to our young listeners and our young folks that are here on the panel with us? Because I do know that growing up and things, and I'm a non-driver. I'll just put that out there. So I'm a non-driver, but sometimes not having a car was already a loss for some people because, you know, you didn't have the latest model car or you didn't have this or that. You know, I'm in the arts media world, so I wasn't a doctor or a lawyer, so that automatically wrote off me to a lot of folks in those kind of categories. So I was just wondering, does that still exist with the generation that y'all are part of, where folks are writing folks off because of their status, their family background? That actually was a plus for me because my family is actually somewhat well known, but or their like careers, or is that less of an issue than it used to be for older generations? Because I do know that a lot of folks would, you know, they'd write you off if you didn't have like the quote unquote right job or the quote unquote right car.
Well, I feel like, because I grew up like in a relatively like, we weren't like rich, but we had enough money. Like there was never an issue. But my parents were like, when I was like, I'm ready to have a car. And I think this may have been when I met you, Tiff. They were like, that's cool.
I remember that.
And I was like, what do you mean? Like, I have to do it myself. But I feel like there's certain they instilled that kind of work ethic in me. And my dad was very much like, I am not keeping up with the Kardashians. We're not doing that. I'm not here to please other people. You shouldn't do that either because you're going to attract the wrong people in your life.
Yeah,
They're
true.
not valuing you for who you are. And there are some people that look for that. It's like, well, this person has a yacht in their family, so I got to be good friends with them. It's like, well, be friends with people because like you are like your soul like connects, and it's a good positive relationship. It's not one-sided. It's not superficial. And I think even me, so I went to school I went for my Bachelor of Fine Arts for film. And then 2 years in, I got diagnosed with ADHD, and like everything kind of like spiraled out of control, which wasn't a bad thing, but I knew I was like, I have to, like, this is I bit off more than I can chew. And I was like, I'm going to take myself out, go to community college, which at first felt like a blow, but I was like, you know what? And there was many times when I was like, I'm not going to finish. And my dad was like, just finish, like, just finish, follow through with it, and just at least get your associates. And I remember when I got my job, like at Eventbrite, and there were people that went to like Belmont University for music business sitting in the same room as me. And I was like, we're all in here together.
Yeah.
I didn't have that you have, and we're still sitting in the same room. So I think it just comes down, like, they didn't write me off, but I did have to put in the like elbow grease to get where I wanted to be, which I think was building in and of itself. And that was that was the second time I applied, and they were like, I see that you're passionate about that, and I respect that. So I'm going to bring you in to talk to you.
Yeah.
And I think that can speak more to your character than what you have been given.
Yeah, I was going to say my main takeaway from people in our generation and what they value or stereotypes they like are against or are for, it's less so like what you're doing, what your job title is, or what your family background is, and more of just, are you a decent person? Are you actively like pursuing goals? Yes. And it doesn't really, like, it doesn't even matter to me specifically what your goal is. Like, if you really want to go do underwater basket weaving, then I want to see you hustling for that. Like, if that is your passion and your goal in life, then I support you. I'll promote your business on my social media. Like, I want to see you underwater basket weave. That sounds awesome. I almost dropped out of college to carve candles. Like, whatever you want to do, but you need to be pursuing it. And for me, that makes my decisions more on like who I want to surround myself with, is like, where are they headed? Not where they've come from, not their background, but like, what are they doing right now? What are they working on right now? I'm hoping, maybe it's just because of who I'm surrounding myself with, but I feel like that's my generation's overwhelming majority. But maybe it's not a majority. Maybe we're split pretty evenly, and there's people that are still having those old school, old timey values of, you know, well, my family does this, so I'm just going to college to get my MRS degree, my marriage license, and like, I think that's still out there, but I'm hoping it's kind of dying out with our generation.
I feel like there still is a bit of a thing about, you know, the college degree. Not as much, because I feel like especially now, you know, when we're moving towards our late 20s, we're like, oh, wow, you know, it doesn't matter as much. But it still is a thing, because I never did the college thing. Never. I mean, I went for 5 minutes to one community college, and then I went to 5 minutes at a conservatory program for film. But both times I left, once because of bad roommates and a lot of lost money. But the second time I left because I was working too much. I was working in live theater in the area, and I was, you know, rather be putting money into my bank account than spending it on student loans. But there still is a weird vibe, like when I'm filling out, you know, applications, they're like, oh, but what's your degree in? Or, you know, what did you go to school for theater? And I didn't. And people are like,
you have like 10 years of experience in the field, so shouldn't that count for something? And you're not in debt, which, like, I can't say. I went to college for 4 years. I have student loans, dude. And like, and what Katie was saying, I've been in rooms with people that had my job or higher that didn't go to college. And I was like, so why? I mean, I loved my college. I love my experience, but like, I am in debt, and it's this degree that I'm just like, I learned a lot. I understand the benefits, but at the same time, some of what I really wanted to accomplish and some of the best jobs, I really didn't need to have spent that much money on my education. Like an associate's would have done in a pinch. Yeah. So I think it is like this kind of this reframing where people are realizing like, I can do what I want to do, and I don't have to go that traditional, just debt suffocating route. I can do a certification at a local community college or a conservatory or an internship program where then I'm just in the company and can go from there. Like they know me and have built me from the ground up, and I work my way up through the company. I think our generation is viewing themselves outside of that traditional 40-hour work week of that. Like I went to school for business. Now I work in a business office and I'm a businessman. Like we don't really do that.
Is that, that whole thing is a fallacy actually, because, have you guys ever read Rich Dad, Poor Dad?
Mm-hmm.
If you haven't, you should. And it basically talks about what you just said. We want to work hard and we want to go get a job and work hard for somebody else to make a lot of money, right? And so my hope is on y'all's generation and Generation Z. I've put so much faith in you guys, man. But seriously, to break loose of those chains, right? If you do want to go to college, rock it out. But then, what are you going to do with it? Are you just going to sit and do what somebody else tells you to do for the next 45 years? Like I had somebody look at my car this morning. He's like, yeah, I've been doing this for 45 years. I'm like, bless your heart. Because he didn't seem happy. He didn't make money. He's got some freedoms, but the people that own the automobile stations are the ones that made the money. Right. So the point is to figure out who you are, what makes your soul spark, right? Like what you were talking about, Katie, earlier, what makes you really come alive, and follow that. You don't have to do what somebody else did. I mean, there's enough people of y'all's generation that you don't have to follow, the traditional route, just like you're saying, Shelby. You don't have to. I know when I was hiring people, I've hired a lot of people in my life. Sometimes I'd put that college education on there, but one thing that working in home building for 25 years taught me is that education doesn't make you smart, and an education doesn't make you capable. There are so many incredible people that move to this country that can barely speak the language and wind up learning how to work the system that's in place and make so much more money than people that, paid student loans for 15 years.
Yeah, I was going to say 15 years, try 30 or 40 years. Shelby, I hate to tell you this, but I'm still paying off my loans. And like I said earlier, I'm 58 and I'm still paying them off. So I know that those can last a while, unfortunately. And you were talking about folks with that mentality and that kind of mentality. While he might not be my favorite person in the world, and I know somebody mentioned Elon Musk, I do have a great deal of respect for him on some levels, but there's also Bill Gates, and Bill Gates dropped out of college. Melinda might have actually gone to.
And that's what I was going to say is our generation has seen so many examples of people who have been groundbreakers, revolutionaries, who've made it, YouTube became a viable career option in our lifetime. Internet persona, a trendsetter, or an influencer, like those are careers that our generation made. And as silly as they might be, it really doesn't matter. That person is happy, and that person is pursuing their goals and living. Well, who's really happy?
What is happy? But a perfect example of that is KSI.
What is happy?
My son loves to watch, or used to watch, this guy, this personality, KSI. And he has made he just started as a little YouTuber guy, right? But he was so hilarious. He broke so many doors. Then all these other people wanted to be like him. So then he got more people involved, called the Sidemen. Then he got into music. Then he got into boxing. And now his music, I tease my son because his first music videos, I'm going to put it in my Generation X way, he was just this kid going, Lamborghini, all this stuff, right? I was kind of making fun of him. But now he's not even 30 years old, and he's probably worth over $10 million. And not just how much he's worth, but how much he can bring in. You know what I mean? He sets up a fight with Logan Paul, and he gets $8 million just because he's got all these followers. So these careers you're talking about, these careers you're talking
brothers.
About. Yeah, I
watched that. I wanted to see him get beat up. Who doesn't want to see a Paul brother get beat up like that?
If it's going to put money in his overinflated pockets, I'm set. I can't stand either of them. I really wanted to. When Shane Dawson did that whole expose on Jake Paul, I was like, maybe I'll. But then Jake Paul. The problem was that Jake Paul kept being Jake Paul after the series was over, and I was like, oh, I almost liked you for half a minute, and then I saw more of your tweets and your posts, and no, you're just really skeezy and awful, but
Yeah,
that seems to be his life goal, and he's making a career of it. So more power to you. It's the millennial dream of America.
I was going to say, it's
millennials are
also
having
become
some
very
amazing
popular
because I actually
millennial
stumbled
dream
across
to
this
be
show that
just
I had
like,
never heard about till yesterday, and I was flipping through something called WeTV, and it was a show on TV, and there were some characters that were millennials, and it was a show called Love After Lockdown, and I'm sitting there going like, why am I watching this? This is a train wreck. But it is literally a show about folks that are in prison, are getting out of prison, and they have found a romantic partner that was already out of prison. So they have been like prison pen pals, and then it's like how they are getting together after they get out. So, like I said, it's a train wreck. If you want to see a real bad train wreck, go watch it. But it's a
But
train wreck.
now, on the other hand, it may be a train wreck, but on one hand, it's like, oh, yay, they're finding love. They're finding, hopefully, happiness. I don't need to watch it, but good for them. If everybody were to find, you were like, happiness, what's happiness? That's a whole other show. But if everybody were to follow back to the soul spark, if everybody were to follow what made their soul sing, and we all just dropped our judgmental, right? That, oh, you're not supposed to do that. If we could drop the shame, the guilt, and be who we are, who we were born to be, then we really, as a planet, we're going to level up. But if we stay down with what we think we're supposed to be, I mean, life is about evolution. We cannot live and not evolve, or else we're going to go backwards, right? We've got to evolve, and each, again, not to put too much pressure, but it's up to the new to bring to change it, right? Because if we keep doing things, Mark, the way we've always done things, we're going to always have what we always had, right?
Well, and I think part of that is a little unfair and gets frustrating for my generation, is this idea that, like, well, it's your world now, so go ahead and fix it, like, if you've got so many better ideas. But then we are still being invalidated and talked to it as if we're the same age as Gen Z right now. Like, no. Sure. I know that you think of me and I'm still the kid with acne from the last family reunion that you were at, but actually I have 10 years experience in my field and multiple degrees and certifications, and I know what I'm talking about, and I'd appreciate you taking me as seriously as I'm taking you, because you taught me that respect is given and earned, and that's what I'm trying to do. So maybe stop calling me a snowflake and posting memes and engage in an actual conversation where we can make solutions happen. Like, I'm just a little frustrated. Like, which side of me do you want? Do you want me to be like your little niece, or do you want me to actually make solutions with you? Because I'm ready for one conversation and you don't seem ready for it. So, like, that's kind of where I'm at with the whole, like, millennials are snowflakes, millennials are sensitive. I'm like, every time I try and have an actual conversation with someone calling me a snowflake millennial, they're already enraged and, like, spitting in my face as they yell at me. And I'm just here like, I have some carefully compiled research and some work experience that I would love to discuss with you and see if we can reach an agreement. But you take a moment and you calm down.
Yeah.
Shelby, I don't know which one of the other ladies mentioned it, but they were talking about the early ways that families used to be, and the fact that the families would be all in one area and things of that nature. And I think that is kind of what we're getting now from the millennial generation, because I have a very dear friend that's in the apartment complex that I'm in now. We run into each other every once in a while, but she's much younger. She's like 30, and there's no romantic kind of thing going on. It's just a very good friendship. And that, because I get the impression that some of the millennials are not as constrained about ageism and age kind of qualities, that as long as you're trying to treat them normally and with respect, and we talk about the fact that she's from Brazil and the garden, and we've actually kind of mutually adopted a rabbit. Well, 2 rabbits.
Nice.
So, a rabbit in the neighborhood, and we were like, hey, it's our rabbit. We'll go ahead and
there you go. Yeah.
But it's our mutually adopted rabbit. But there's nothing like other than a mutual friendship that's going on. But I think she's turning 30 next month. And like I said, I'm 58, so I'm double her age. But it's that energy.
One of my best friends is 68 years old. Like, age is really, and I don't mean that, like you're saying, like, this is not something that I'm speaking of from like a romantic or sexual area at all. But really, like, as long as you're treated with respect and we click, that, going back to what you were saying, the energy or whatever, one of my best friends that I have like the best talks with and really like value his opinion, and I take his word with like a really heavy weight to it, is like 68. and we do the crossword together when we see each other. This is way pre-COVID, but like he's one of my closest friends. He's like the coolest person. He's 68, and I'm sure people think weird things when they see us like out to dinner together because I'm very baby faced still. But yeah, like age is just a number. If you're clicking with someone, if you're having conversations and learning and growing and enjoying each other, then like I don't care if you're a boomer. I don't hate boomers. That's the other thing too, is like everyone's like, well, you're a liberal and I hate you, and you're going to hate me because I'm a conservative, or I'm a boomer, so all millennials hate me, or I'm like a white man, so I'm the villain now, I guess. It's like, that's not how anyone is viewing you. That's how you're feeling based on your perception of the world around you. Yeah, like I'm coming in so open to meet everyone that I meet. I am incredibly nice. I am like, I call myself a target. I'm empathetic, and I have like this very sweet, approachable face, and I'm good with kids, and I'm good with adapting to different levels of conversation and different types of people. I grew up around a vast variety of human beings that I got to interact with as a kid and a young adult. So like, I'm always open. But if you're going to come in and yell at me about being a snowflake, like you're the one not being open and buying into stereotypes. True. I haven't made any assumptions about you. I'm here to have a good time and like vibe with people.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I, work with stagehands. Like, sure, a lot of the people in my industry, the actors and whatnot, are all young, and that's what you think of when you think, theater and actors, you think young people. All the guys I work with backstage, the youngest guy after me is 39 years old. And then next person older than him is 47. So like everybody I work with is, older, crotchety white guys, good old boy style. And yet we talk about the silliest things. We all have conversations since, the apocalypse has happened. All the theater people were all out of work, which is also questioning who are we now. But, I call my buddy Darren, who's recently a grandfather, and we chat on the phone for 2 hours at a time, because even though he's, I think, a year younger than my dad, we talk like we, went to high school together. Like, we just chit chat about everything, because there is no age difference really. As long as we're all at a, mutual level of respect, then it's all worth it. The conversation's going to be good. We're all, accepting the other person's opinion, not, oh, they're older than me, so okay, boomer, or oh, they're just a kid. It's just, okay, do we have, something, we have a meaningful conversation we can have, and then let's have it.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I've never felt any kind of stereotyping from Katie. I mean, she never came in like, oh, you're that person and I'm this person. It was just like, hey, what's up? And we shared what we had, what was going on.
And you would go ahead.
Katie's always been the type of person that just like fits the room. Like, reads, like, she's so good at reading people and reading the room. And if she needs to step up and be the social hostess with the mostest, like, she can step in and be like, have you met so-and-so? They do this. And you were there last weekend, so you guys can chat about this. And she'll go work the room. Or if like that's already handled and they just need someone low key to kind of like have a quiet corner for the introverts, like Katie can go head up the introvert. Like, you are just the quintessential adaptable millennial. And I think a lot of us fit that because our careers have changed so much. We have like a really high rate of parents that are divorced. So we have these multiple families we have to circumnavigate and figure out. Yeah. So yeah, Katie is the least like easily defined, because she'll be whatever she needs to be to like make it work, whatever the event or the thing is. Like, and it's so natural to who she already is that it doesn't ever feel like she's being fake or putting on a front. It's just like she snaps into that mode, which I think can confuse some of us with Kiernan's whole like, who am I thing. It's like, okay, at any given event, like, all right, I am the designated driver, so I will not be much fun, and I will not be making jokes, and I will not be singing any karaoke, but I will get you home safe, and you can count on me to hold your hair back or something.
Wait a minute, we're not going to get any karaoke from you? I'm highly disappointed. But,
it doesn't take much encouraging. It doesn't take much encouraging.
At the old man in this group,
even on a DB night, I'm still karaokeing.
There's a group of folks that do this virtual dance party. And, you get to click a magic button, and then you get to put yourself on the screen. I am the world's worst dancer, but I hit the magic button because they keep enticing you to do it. So then I dance on the screen, making a complete fool of myself, or trying yoga, making a complete fool of myself as well.
I'm here for that though. I'm here for making a fool of yourself at all points in time.
Here's
I
Kieran.
started vlogging
Yeah.
for that purpose. I was like, who wants to see me be really weird today? Let's do this.
You don't
Made
have
a
to
video
say
of
in the
me dyeing
matter.
my hair.
It's happening anyway. Like,
I mean, that's just basically like, have you entered my presence whatsoever?
yeah.
I get compliments from strangers on the street. I was doing my makeup one time and my whole purse toppled over and I just looked at it and went, awesome, and then continued. And a random guy went, I love your style. I was like, embrace the ridiculous. Let's just continue
Yeah,
this.
exactly.
Well, I think
Constantly question who you are and just be whoever.
because when you brought this up earlier about like just kind of being like authentically yourself, it can be a little scary to like let loose of those like chains and be like, I'm just gonna crack a joke here because I feel like there's some tension and I want to disperse that in the room right now. And then as soon as you do that, people are like, oh, like I like that girl, like she's cool, she can
Yeah.
adapt, like you said. And I have always tried to embrace that because I'm like, the thing I hate the most is like feeling that like no one knows how to act
The
right now.
tension that
You're in a new group of people and you're like, well, none of us, let's go around the room and say something about each other. And that's
right? Yeah.
awkward. And then it's like you inject some humor into the situation, people can kind of they have permission to let loose as well. And then when you give yourself that permission to be who you are, you're going to naturally like attract the people that are going to fit into your life. Because that's when I feel like when I haven't been that person, I'm like, why are there all these random people in my life that I'm not getting anything out of these relationships? I'm like, oh, I'm not being myself around them. So I think I quickly adapted like how to behave in different situations because I'm like, I want to attract the people that are comfortable being weird and silly because that's the person that I want to be. And
I want to attract people that are like feeling the group. I want to attract the type of people that can read a room. So that's the type of person I'm going to be. And even if it backfires and I like say something stupid or it gets really cringy, then like that's going to attract someone who like is equally empathetic and is like cringing on my behalf, and we can make eye contact and they'll be like, that was awkward. I'll be like, yes, it was. And now I have my awkward buddy for the night.
Well, I can definitely relate because I'm seen as the empathetic one as well, usually in any situation. So I usually pop in there and am Mr. Empathetic and things along those natures. But I was just curious to all of you on the panel, Tish included, how do you all deal with getting rid of those toxic people? Because there are toxic people in our lives, and yeah, the family ones we have to deal with. But how do you get rid of the ones or put them on downplay those that are in your social circles? Because there are oftentimes those toxic people that are even in your social circles. So how do y'all deal with that when you find those folks?
I feel like I have a very radical approach to dealing with, if it's specifically like a friend, like someone I don't have to interact with, I just legitimately just like cut them out of my life very instantaneously. I'm like, because some things are just not worth the energy, which is a lot of things, we all understand this and process it, but a lot of people, there's the urge to be polite about it and the urge, well, I do see them, we have friends in common, so we'll just, and I don't believe in that. If you're gonna be problematic or you're gonna just steal my time away from me, steal my energy from me, then if you're not contributing to this, it's not worth it. I'm not giving all for nothing in return. So I genuinely I'm like, if you text me, I go, okay, sure. But I won't reach out to people. I won't talk to them anymore. And then that's it. And, if you ask me why, I will tell you why. You may cry after that, but I will tell you. Because I feel like is odd about me, that I don't see the point in lying to people about things like that. I don't see the point of holding up the facade, because nothing is gained from that. If you're just polite and you tiptoe around things, nothing is gained. If I tell you this thing you're doing is toxic, it hurts me, please change, or we can't hang out because it's not good for my mental health. And if they choose not to change, then I'm not saying they're a bad person. They shouldn't be allowed to do what they want. I just don't have to be around it, and I will choose not to. I don't think it's worth compromising.
Yeah, I think because there's this thing going around for a while. I kept seeing it as like memes and little like those motivational quotes that people post on their social media, where it was like, you don't have to explain to anyone why you cut them out of your life if they're toxic. And part of me is like, yeah, do it. Like if they're toxic, then bye. But having been on the receiving end of like a friend just leaving your life with no explanation, that's really scarring and damaging. And if I was doing something to hurt you and you never told me or explained it, then how do I know I'm not hurting more people? And it just gets this weird cyclical thought going in your head of like what you've done wrong. And it places a lot of the blame on you with no means of resolving that level of like inner turmoil. So I've taken that in my experiences. And now if I ever feel the need to cut someone out, or if they're expressing like toxic behavior or doing toxic things, I just have really clear boundaries for what I've learned I can handle having in my life. And if you're like, my main one is that I can get along with pretty much anyone unless you're preaching and promoting things that are outright harmful to other people, then sorry, like that's not differing opinions. That's you being a predator and a violator and not someone I can have in my life. And then the other boundary that I have is if you are going to perpetuate any of like my own negative self-thoughts that I have and things that I'm working towards like feeling better about, and you're actively sitting there and telling me like feeding into that like mean voice in my head, then you don't get to be in my life. And I make that pretty clear to everyone. So I'll warn people if they're saying something or if they kind of like echo a negative thought, I'm like, you know, that's something I'm working on. Like, you know, I'm insecure about that, or that I constantly feel like I need too much. So for you to call me needy is a little messed up. You know how hard I'm working to be independent. And when I do ask for help, it's actually very difficult. So you need to respect this. And if they won't change, then it's on me. It becomes my responsibility and my respect for myself that I have to show. Because again, that goes back to like, you get the respect that you give. And I give myself the respect to like enforce those boundaries. And so I have had to kick some people out of my life, but they were given fair warning and like told why. I really can't get behind that whole, like, you can just leave any toxic person with no explanation. Like that's toxic too. Like that does damage at the same time as you like resolving your damage.
Relevant there. Like I think you should. And as you get older, you will start understanding like when a boundary has been violated, even though you couldn't articulate it before. Now you're like, yeah, I'm not doing that again. I'm not putting up with that behavior from anybody in my life. So then you're like clear with the relationships you have. And then the new ones you have, you're like, hey, just so you know, if X, Y, and Z ever happens, I'm going to have to like put a stop to this. And then that's their fair warning. It's like, if that happens, there's no surprise why I have to cut you out. And I'm not responding to your texts because I'm not investing my energy into someone that's draining mine.
Yeah, and I would want to know like their limits too, is what are things that I'm doing that might push you away, or things that would be like a hard limit for you, even, and again, like not romantically or anything, just like friendship wise. Like, are you the type of person where we can go a month without Snapchatting and then I send you just a silly video and we pick right back up? Or are you going to be like, you only message me when you need something? And it's like, no, it's just like, we're busy and this is how I do friendship. So.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I haven't been good at removing toxic people. I have had for so many decades this belief that everybody's good and just things happen to them. Now, I've realized since, the last 5 decades that unfortunately, I hate to say this out loud even, but not everybody is born good.
Yeah.
And I've had to come to terms with that because I've given some people so many chances over and 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 over again. I swear, right? Till it kills me, till I lose me. Right. And this is both friendships and lovers, if you will. And so I swung the other way and kind of closed up shop and didn't let anybody in. Mm-hmm. And now I'm, letting people in, but I'm listening to my energy. Right. If I meet you and my energy goes, woo, and I'm like, hey, what's up? But if I meet you and my energy goes, oh, then so I'm trying to not cut it off at the pass, but almost cut it off at the pass because I know my heart will get involved and I will try to carry you 100 miles. And that's not my job. Right.
Oh yeah. So this is super cheesy and I'm about like 10 years too late for this little like promo, but the book Eat, Pray, Love by Elizabeth Gilbert is really, yeah, it's so cheesy. It's like, it's in the Hall of Fame of like cheesy girl anthem type books. However, there is this line in the first few chapters where she's describing her like her style of loving, how she loves people, how she gives love in her life. And it resonated so hard with me when I was in college, where I'm paraphrasing. It's like, if I love you with everything I have. You can have my time, my money, my dog's time, my dog's money. If I don't have those things to give you, I'll give you a rain check, a sun check, a rainbow in the sky check. Like, this is a big long thing about like how your style of love is to give and to give and to give and to give. And then when there's nothing left for me to give, the only way for me to get over you is to fall head over heels in love with someone new. And it took me a while to realize, like, that's how I was loving, is that I can't bring myself to walk away from a person. I'm going to keep giving and like trying to fix them and help them. And it's my fault, or there's more things I could do and try. And then you're burnt out and you can't. And the only way to do it is to meet someone else and go, oh, but I could fix you. And it's just like, I've got tools for you. Right?
Yeah. I'm trying to popularize in regular conversation the use of the phrase reclaiming my time, because sometimes you just need to reclaim your time. You know, they do it at Congress. Why can't I do it in my living room? You know, because sometimes it's just, this thing it's taking my energy, and sorry, I'm reclaiming my time.
I'm
this is what's happening.
But you're not going to get paid.
True story.
It's like Congress.
You do have to reclaim your time sometimes, because I remember I was in and this was years ago. I don't remember how many years ago, maybe 6 or 7 years ago, but I was in a relationship, and it was a somewhat toxic relationship, and it was not a good relationship to be in. I knew it was not a good relationship. We had different opinions. They were very ultra conservative in some ways, even during the age of the whole bathroom rights kind of thing. They were going on one side of that ticket and another, and ironically turned out that later on their daughter did come out as I guess she came out as bi. I'm not sure if she came out as bi or gay, but definitely came out in one form or fashion or another. But literally at one point or another, I just felt that it was becoming, even in my age, and at that time I was in early 50s, or maybe early 50s, it was too toxic. So I literally walked away, because like you said, reclaiming, sometimes you just got
reclaiming your time.
Walk away. So I was like,
I love that.
Grab my stuff, and while they were gone, I was like, I'm out.
Yeah. My dad, like, when I think this was during the time when I was pretty frequently like babysitting Kitos for you, Tish. So when my parents were like going through their divorce, like, and my dad was kept having like these revelations about just like when he should walk away. And my parents are both in like mutually happy relationships independently now. So like they've, reconciled that within themselves too. But at the time he was really kind of fighting with that. And like, one thing he kept telling me, because I was also in a relationship and not going through similar things, but just he wanted to like impart that like dad knowledge on me, was like, if you have like, say like a literal physical check, and that's your emotional checkbook balance, like say it's $100, and you keep writing these checks, and like at one point the checks are going to start bouncing, and it's like, how many of those are you going to write until you decide like, hey, I can't do this anymore? And like, just to have that awareness of like, I have a finite amount of energy I can spend on the people in my life. And are they also writing me checks in return? Or am I just emptying my checking balance for these other people? And if that's the case, then it's like time to wash your hands and like walk away from that. And that's not a bad, it just means things run their course.
No, it's good for you as a human. I mean, we've talked about how mental health manifests as physical, and I think something our generation has done really well is not shy away from like mental health or disabilities, and kind of owning up what that reality is, instead of trying to fake it and be like, no, I'm normal just like everyone else. It's like, no, I have this thing, and here's how it makes my life different. And it's more a lot of awareness. There's the spoon theory for people with chronic illness, where it's that you start every day with a certain amount of spoons, and like a healthy person really doesn't ever think about how many spoons they have, because they never run out. But someone who has a disability has less spoons, and certain tasks are going to require certain spoons. So like getting up, getting out of bed, getting dressed, that's just a spoon for me. But if I have to like run to the grocery store or work outside, and I'm having like, and this isn't my experience, I don't have any physical illnesses at the moment, knock on wood, thank goodness. But it'd be like, oh, but I have to work outside today and my arthritis is flaring up. So that's going to be 5 spoons. And I know that this is really only a 10-spoon day for me. And so it's this really great way to like visualize and have people understand this concept of like, I have a tangible quantitative amount of time, energy, motivation, whatever it is, to give to you, to give to this project. And here's what it is. And when it runs out, that's really all it is. You have to kind of look at your life the way that executives would look at a budget. And it's really hard to do because a lot of what we feel is qualitative data and not quantitative. I can't tell you that I have like 10 units of caring about your work trauma left. Like, it's like at a certain point, I'm going to tell you like, I'm sorry, work sucked, but like, do you want a solution or do you want to keep venting? Because I can't take on any more emotional nonsense today. And you've made your point, work sucked and I'm sorry. So are we going to work towards a solution, or do you need to sit here and bitch about work, or curse about work for another 30 minutes? Like, what do you need from me? And here's how much I can give you. And I think our generation is getting better at recognizing that everyone has their limits to what they can give, not just financially, because I know donations and supporting causes is really important and great right now, but there are lots of other ways you can give. And if you have time or resources or the emotional excess to give and care, that there are a lot of ways that you can step up. And I think our generation, the millennial generation, has kind of piloted that frontier of just, we're not all wealthy. We're pretty broke as a generation. At least that's what I'm seeing from my end. We're all hovering around that like poverty line right now, maybe a little bit above it, some months more than others. But there are other ways we're learning how to give because we recognize that that's something that like gives back. Like, so I don't know.
Totally.
It's just, that's maybe part of like the who we are is how do I give? How am I making an impact? What am I doing as part of who I am? And so I can't give. I'm not able to donate $100 on behalf of every family member as a Christmas present, which my family has taken to doing every year. I'm like, I can't donate that much. So we've switched up how we donate and give. I give time, I give resources, I give in all these other ways that make me feel good and that I'm actually able to give from. So I'm not getting into the negatives with my energy or my finances or my, the amount of time that I'm actually putting in, like working on a project. I help a lot of my friends with their side businesses right now because everyone's kind of in a frenzy. And there are some days where I have to say, like, I really can't come help you stuff envelopes. I know it's not hard, but that's 2 hours that I need to go do something else. And so those boundaries do help us define who we are, not only in that they like define us by being a boundary, but in that it's how we're giving. It's the impact we're making.
Somebody beeping.
Are we haunted? What's happening?
Is someone on fire?
Are we about to be cut off, Mark?
Yeah. How do you think the generation is doing in terms of like dealing with mental health? Because I know somebody mentioned mental health earlier in this conversation and what they had going on in their life. And I know that it wasn't until I was in my 20s, maybe 30s, but definitely I think it was the 20s that I was diagnosed with dysgraphia, which is a form of dyslexia. So like I said, I just knew I was learning differently and learning in a different way, but I had no idea what was going on until I went to a Goodwill session and was having some sort of testing, and doing that testing, that's when they discovered the dysgraphia existed. But before that, I had no clue that that's why I was, quote unquote, that different person. Because, we all have our differences. I just thought I was just a different person. So how do y'all think as a generation y'all are doing with coping with dealing with mental illness or just education in general? Because I sometimes wonder if y'all feel that the education system is as strong as say it was in Tish's era or in my era or even in my grandparents' era, or do you think that it's worse?
I feel like, education in a specific reference to mental illness, we're doing a lot better because a lot more people are more open talking about their mental illness, talking about, the, very taboo subjects about it. Because I struggled with, I have bipolar 2, bipolar depression, and I was misdiagnosed as just, classic dysthymic depression for so long. And so I knew I had something and I knew something was going on. But it didn't, there were too many ups and downs, like literally emotionally, that it, made sense. But I was like, oh, it's just the depression, and it's just, anxiety goes with it. But, especially now that I've, learned the things, I'm so here for talking about it all the time, because, getting that for sure diagnosis of like, this is actually what's happening. Like, you're not just having bad days where you decide to go spend $300 on online stuff that I literally just decided I can't live without. It's not just, I had a really bad reckless day. It was literally that my, serotonin levels went wild. So now knowing that, and knowing that, my really bad days weren't actually being treated by my SSRIs, because they're not for bipolar, they're for depression. I needed the mood stabilizers I have now. So I'm now, 6 years clean of self-harm, which is, time that I've been on my new meds. Exactly. And I've gotten, since finding the right medication, I started wearing short shorts until probably I was 15 years old. My friends didn't know I had knees because I refused to have them visible in public. But after, really accepting, coming to terms with my mental illness and saying that it's something different. It's something, chemical imbalance, sure, but it's not wrong with me. It's something that I'm dealing with. It's not a defect. So yeah, it's a little scary how many scars I have on my thighs, but I'm not ashamed of them in that sense, because it happened to me and I'm growing with it, and I want to talk about it so that we can find a way to stop feeling so bad about ourselves. That that's something that a lot of people, unfortunately, still now, a lot of the prepubescent feel like, I hate myself so much that I want to do things like that. So we're, taking this moment to talk about those things so we have a better support system with, our friends. Because by the time I did start opening up about it to friends when I was in high school, the number of people that could immediately relate to, I felt like that. I've done that to myself too. And then having those people to talk to. So even now, if I have my bad days, I'll post, something on my private friends only Snapchat account of this is a really bad day. I actually did this not too long ago, because had the full realization of live theater is casually dead for the moment. So the really existential, who am I now? I've spent a decade of my life preparing for a career that doesn't exist. So I posted, I'm having a really bad day and I really just don't feel like anything's worth it. And had several people, even people I didn't, necessarily expect to say it, reach out to me and say, hey, I'm here for you. Hey, I felt things like that before. Awesome. I've been in a bad place. So if you need to talk, let's talk, because I don't want you to feel like that. I've known what it was like and I hated it, obviously. So I don't want you to hate it. I want you to know that you're wrong. You shouldn't hate yourself. You're an amazing person. You're a beautiful individual. And I want to have you in my life. And so being able to start that conversation is much more prevalent in our generation, because I'll say things. My mom also struggles with mental illness, but she's less immediate about talking about it than I am. I'm like, let's talk about it. Let's talk about all the times I decided I hated myself.
I think our parents also, and I'm speaking for us specifically, but I think it might be a generational thing. My parents, from my experience, had this whole well, if we don't talk about it, if we don't expose you to media that shows you these illnesses, if we don't let you watch the movies that maybe romanticize mental illness or eating disorders or self-harm, then it won't be an issue. And that's so not true. These kids and these preteens are finding these things, their feelings and the things that lead you to this self-destructive, self-harming behavior still exists. Not talking about depression, anxiety, mental disorders, cognitive development issues, not talking about any of that stuff doesn't make it not a thing.
Right.
So I think our generation has kind of suffered, but also learned and grown and improved from that, is that we were kind of told it's a phase, don't talk about it, don't tell your friends about it, you're just doing it because your friends are doing it, all of these typical parent excuses where it's going to make your parents feel better, because then it's not your kid, it's that their friends that they're hanging out with are making them do it. It's just the influences in their life, and if we buckle down on the TV they watch and we buckle down on who they hang out with, that they won't have depression and she won't try and carve her arm up at Thanksgiving, and that's just not true. So our generation has kind of reclaimed it, and the other day I was talking to my therapist and she said this, and it's just the most normal sentence. It doesn't turn any heads, it doesn't bat any lashes. That is just a normal conversation that my friends and I have on a regular basis. It's oh, it was good, I was in therapy and she said this, and what do you think about that? And we have these really open discussions about our mental health, and it helps you not only not feel alone, but also it ends a lot of the like false narrative and stigmatization of mental illnesses, where like bipolar as portrayed in the movies is just like, oh, she was just crazy. She was just doing drugs and having sex and stealing things, and she was just bipolar. She was insane. I'm like, that is a very small percentage of bipolar people, a very small percentage of the time.
That's
Most of it
the
is like
very extremes of the diagnosis of, oh, those are the worst things you're doing. So that's obviously what you're doing all the time.
That makes the best movie for sure. Like, I get it. It's great cinematography. However, like, let's talk about what it really feels like to have cyclical mental health with highs and lows and depressive and manic episodes. Like, that is a real thing that happens to real people, and they can be functioning bipolar and not be diagnosed and still have like all these negative impacts on their life. So it's been really helpful for me, for my friends I've spoken with, to have examples.
Right, to share, to know that you're not alone and other people face it too, because mental health is part of the health that you really need to work at, just like you do your physical health and everything else. And I think your mental health is so closely tied to your physical health. Now, let me ask you this. You mentioned medication before. Now, how much, so for folks that take medication for their mental health, for, whatever it is they may have, how many people do you think try behavior control or modification of like what they eat, what they think, how they live? An example, this is a very small example. Like, there's some people that think as soon as your eyes open, you need to get up, because your energy, if you don't, then your energy will go, not really flatline, but then your energy will do something different than if you get up. And I've tested that. And the days that I go ahead and I get up, holy cow, I get so much done even before noon. But those days that I'm like, I'm going to lay here. In fact, I might read a little bit. I don't know, that I don't get up, my energy changes. So my question is, where do you fall with because one part of the mental illness is it seems like there's a lot of folks that are on medication. And while some people have to be on medication, there's some folks that I wonder if lifestyle changes would be better. So for me, of my generation, Generation X, like you said, the one that's almost been absorbed into the boomers, I wonder, it just concerns me, all these children. An example, hanging out with a friend of mine, her son, she's talking about, oh, I had to put him on the ADHD medication, but she's sitting there giving him the sugar cereal, right? What kind of sports, what kind of outlet does he have for his energy? Are you doing any kind of meditation to get his brain waves change? You know what I mean? There's so much that can be done. So I'm just curious where, we fall with that medication point.
So from my experience in the studies I've done in psychology, as well as my personal experience with psychiatry and mental health, there is a big fear within that community, within doctors for the most part, of overprescription of these intense pharmaceuticals. They've been out long enough now that we're having results from these studies come in, and we're realizing that we don't necessarily know what we've been cramming down the throats of American citizens. However, it is still pretty much the consensus with everyone that when it comes to ADD, ADHD, bipolar disorder, severe chronic depression, anxiety, that the first step in order to get you to a point where you can handle making those lifestyle choices is to medicate. That it is that stepping stool to get you to a point where we can eventually dial you off of it. Our goal would be, if you have a condition where it doesn't require medication, that you can manage it yourself. A lot of it is just working through therapy, DBT therapy, group therapy, whatever works best for you. However, there's a limiting factor with people who have neurological deficits, changes, misfirings in their brain, where to even get me to the point where I can do that in my life, I need that chemical redirect. And maybe we can wean me off of that, but it's the easiest to diagnose, the easiest to track and monitor the success or the failure of. It's the easiest to adjust and know that that's the controlled substance that you're adjusting and not these vague quantitative lifestyle changes.
Yeah.
I think most of us are okay with meds, but none of us want, doped up children who aren't themselves. We just want you to get to a point where you're stable enough to look at alternative treatments, and meds are currently the fastest and safest way to do that.
So my experience with that is, like, I was diagnosed with ADHD way, way, way late. in my experience, like late in life. And my boyfriend was also just diagnosed. He's about to be 26. I was diagnosed at 19 because I was an advocate for myself. And I was at a point where I was like, I feel like I have tried to exhaust every possible option that's available to me, every coping mechanism, like anything that I had immediate control over at like 16, 17, 18. I was like, how can I've got an agenda. I'm writing everything down, still forgetting things every day. Things like that. I was like, I feel like I've hit a wall with the things that I can control, and my life still feels like it's spiraling. And so at 19, I took myself to like the psychiatrist's office at my school, and I was like, hey, I really need help here. Like, I don't know what's going on. Here's what I think is happening, but I want to do well in school. Like, I know that I am capable of doing the assignments that are being handed to me, but I'm like it's like my executive, I call it my executive dysfunction. Like, my brain was just like, too much, can't do it. And as soon as I got on medication, there was a little bit of an adjustment period, like about a month or two. But I took it today. It's like night and day. Like Shelby said, it kind of levels the playing field in that, like, now I've taken out the variable that's causing me to struggle, and I am now the person. I'm capable of doing the things that I know I'm capable of doing. But I still take days off. I don't take it every day and rely on it. That's just in my case, because I like to call it unmedicated when I don't take my medicine. And I do that intentionally to give myself like some breathing room and kind of just stay in touch with, because like there's huge benefits to my ADHD. Like, I can hyper focus to no end. I have so much passion, so much energy when it comes to the things that I care about. But if it's like a very mentally taxing assignment or anything like that, I'm like, today's the day I need my medication. And I don't view it as a bad thing, but it's like just another tool in my belt of things to use when I need to be successful.
Fair enough.
Well, it's triage. It's how, like, because I think the struggle a lot of Americans and a lot of older generations have is viewing mental health as like this other health. It's really not. You're going to treat it the same way that you would walking into the ER. I need to know your family history, medical history. I need to know what your most severe complaints are, not what I view as the most severe, but what do you think is impacting you the most? Like, what made you come in today? Is it that you're not remembering things? Is it that you haven't been able to get out of bed for a month? Is it that you're having panic attacks on the daily, or something that you think could be a panic attack, but you're not sure? Like, what brought you in today? And then how can we treat it? And the same way that a doctor would look at like the most glaring injury and treat it first, that's what your mental health team should be doing for you. Is, okay, let's stop the bleeding. Like, you're bleeding out, so let's go ahead and tourniquet or whatever. Like, I'm not a medical professional, but I play one on a podcast.
And you're doing a great job of it and everything.
I know, right?
Wrap up your thoughts. I've got to put on my producer hat right now, Tish, and everything. This conversation is just fascinating, by the way, and we could probably go on for like hours on hours. But I think that Shelby's also said that she's got to get ready to draw very shortly as well, and I'm sure other folks have to get going. But one thing I was going to let y'all know is that I'm thoroughly enjoying y'all's conversation and y'all's energy. Yes, I borrowed your phrase, Tish. I'm enjoying all of their energy and everything. So I actually do a couple of shows of my own as well. The radio show with Mark Lee, as well as the online dinner party, which is on Wednesday. I will get y'all's information from Tish, but if any of y'all would like to jump on that conversation, I would love to have any of y'all three on there, because it is done on the afternoon. It's usually one is at 2 and the other is at 4 in the afternoon. The 2 is on Monday and the 4 is on Wednesday. But definitely, I'm loving y'all's energies, y'all's conversation, y'all's insight, and that's part of what the dinner party is all about, is getting insight from all kinds of folks. We had a magician on this past week as well.
Oh my gosh.
With an actress. So Camille Cower, who you
My
know,
people.
that are in here may know Camille. And so Camille was one of my guests, along with Sean J. Sean J was the magician. So like I said, we're always having folks that are involved in all kinds of things. So hope that y'all can come on and join us in that platform as well. Like I said, I'll get the information from Tish, because I do love to hearing the positive voices and the positive thoughts that many of y'all are having and that are being shared. But do want everybody to have a chance to wrap up. And of course, Tish can close everything out after y'all give y'all's final thoughts. And I don't know how Tish wants to frame it, and she can also tell me if she wants that song to play at the end, since I gotta have that roll. But she can say either go with it or she'll end it just flat. But we'll decide that as we're going along. But Tish, I'm tossing it back to you, and you can let them make their final comments and then make your final comments. But I am tossing it back to you, and just wanted to say how much I've enjoyed this conversation, and y'all gave me a lot to think about, and definitely was enjoying the energy that y'all created. So definitely thanks for being on here. And hey, Tish, I think we might have set a record. It's almost a 2-hour show, but
I know, right? I just
saying no problem, because he was telling us that time was not a constraint, and we've had some other long shows as well. So it's toward the end of the block that we have, so we're good with it going over. But at the same time, I know folks have to get back to their normal course of the day, and these ladies have been amazing. So I think you might want to start off with Shelby, since Shelby probably has to be the first one to go, but then the rest, and then your final thoughts, and then we'll wrap it up from there. But that's my little spiel, and I'm tossing it back to you, Tish.
Well, I think you've already tossed it in a direction there. So, Miss Shelby.
I just want to say thank you for having me on. This was awesome. I've known Kiernan, and I call her Mulaney, but she is an adult now and goes by her first name. So Katie. I've known them since high school, and it was just really cool to come on here and talk about something that I know we have all had some interesting experiences. Just being millennials. So it was really great to be given a platform to kind of talk about how we feel about the world right now, the world we grew up in. And I don't have any big projects going on at the moment. My work has just picked back up. So I'm kind of like putting my life back together, like I think a lot of America is right now. And kind of like, Are we going back into quarantine, coming out of quarantine? So I'm still figuring things out. But thank you so much for having me on. And hopefully we'll have more conversations in the future. This was awesome.
I hope so. Eventually, what my vision is to actually get a multi-generational panel, and then having certain questions. So I want somebody from Generation Z, a millennial, somebody from X, potentially a boomer, and then present questions, and then see how each generation, number one, can learn from each other, but also, you know, whatever type of message they think needs to be represented. So I'd love to have you on again, Shelby.
Thank you.
Kiernan, do you have any final thoughts? I'm sure you do. Stay weird.
Oh, stay weird. Always. Those are the final thoughts. Well, my favorite thing, I have it actually written on the whiteboard that I keep in my room, and I love to say to friends and write it on their mirrors with expo markers. Your current situation is not your final destination. And those are words to live by, because just like, you know, the future is stupid, this moment isn't everything. You know, everything can change. Everything's constantly growing. Your current situation is not your final destination.
Awesome.
Very Kiernan words to live by.
Very Kiernan. Fabulous. Miss Mulaney.
I feel like my final thoughts on this conversation are to piggyback off what Kiernan said. Like, time is just going to pass, and this moment we'll be able to look back in our rear view and be like, wow, we just lived through that, and that was crazy. And the future, we'll have so much more appreciation for the things that do go right, and like play out the way, even if it's not the way that we want, but play out in a positive way where it's like, I'm glad I stuck it out long enough to see this turn around in a positive direction. I'm glad I didn't give up hope. And I think it's just really important to keep that positive outlook, as tempting as it may be to just fall into the abyss that is the unknown. Like, just to stay in touch with the people that matter to you, like reach out if you need help. Be transparent, like share the good and the bad, because social media these days just really highlights all people's wins. And when you're comparing your life to that, it's like, I'm a failure, but you're not. Like, it's important to remember that like everybody that has a win has also experienced like 20 defeats, in comparison to that. So there's a lot of people aren't vocal about that. So just remember that, that's the perception that people want to share. But if you're open to it, like to be honest with your friend group about that, you might get some companionship and some insight that you might otherwise have closed yourself off to.
100%. I mean, it's all about connecting, right? And being there together.
Yeah.
And allowing yourself to be vulnerable and honest and transparent. You know, the time of the ego is no longer. I want to say in the 50s, the ego, you know, raged, this is what we look like, perfect little family, you know, and just about, you know, 90% of people, it was hell behind the door,
Exactly.
you know, so that's gone. That needs to go. Whether it's, you know, patriarchy, matriarchy, I don't know, but we need to be in a compassionate world where we care about each other and we're here for each other. And those people that spark those genuine connections, we need to follow that, because that's our soul spark saying, hey, and they may have a key, they may have a ticket to where the next road goes. Yeah, you know, the future is stupid. We have no idea what's going to happen, right? I love that. And I love your explanation of it too. Because it's such a word that gets people. And even when I posted it on my wall, I'm like, I don't know, you know, what am I saying here? You know, and what a beautiful explanation you gave, that the future's uncertain. It's indeterminate, if you will. We're beyond postmodernism. Postmodernism was about indeterminacy. We're beyond that at this point. We know there's nothing that can be absolutely determined, because it's going to change.
Yeah,
exactly.
You know, as soon as you try to
stress it.
Enjoy it. Do what your soul wants you to do. Because another reason why I think we're all in boxes, you know, not literally here, but is, you know, I was like, wait a minute, we are in boxes, but is because of what people thought they had to do. And you guys are showing the way that you need to be real. You need to be transparent. You need to be vulnerable, especially with those people that you trust. Right.
Absolutely. Because this is the only moment you'll ever be able to live in.
True.
Hey, it's the only place we live.
Exactly.
We don't live tomorrow.
Here and now.
Yeah.
And thank you guys so much for making the right here and now so beautiful.
Aw, I'm happy to be here.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much, and I hope to see you guys again soon. And if you really do dye hair, Kieran, I'm going to tell you, I don't know who else is watching right now, but I got to say, my next goal, this whole bottom layer, I want to be a rainbow.
Ooh,
I take my top layer, and I want like yellow all the way. Oh, hey, Mark, what do you think about how should we do your hair? Or should we do your beard?
I don't know. I'm trying to figure out whether I'm going to dye the beard, because I'm tired of the white beard look. So I like it when it wasn't the white beard. So I might dye the beard, but I don't know if I'm going to get any funky colors into it, like an orange beard or something like that. But might do something different. But definitely, I do know that. By the way, I just want to let you know, you did have a couple of comments. Michelle Wright said that we definitely need a positive change in the world by all. And then Nick Valveda, who is actually one of the founders of IBM TV, just popped in recently and said, good show. So that is one of the founders of IBM TV, and he definitely was enjoying what is going on here and everything. So definitely have to give them a shout out. And some of the other folks connected with IBM TV, and they did not put their name, so I don't know which one it was, but they said amazing conversation, and they love to talk and power talk. So definitely they were enjoying everything that was going on and things of that nature. So y'all got some great reviews and some folks that said some amazing things. Like I said, I don't know about that whole dyeing the hair kind of thing for myself. That's just not my thing. But then again, my brother's got tattoos, and I didn't do the tattoo thing either. But I might get a henning tattoo, since there's a lot easier to wash them off. They're gone.
Oh yeah, I've got so many.
Come get tattoos. Come get your hair did. Let's go. We'll have a beauty day.
Just saying, my favorite brand of hair dye, Punky Color, is on sale at Ulta right now. Just so you know.
Are you sponsored by Ulta?
I should be, right? Punky Color at Ulta, $7.99, curbside pickup. Just saying.
That was amazing.
There you go.
Tish, do you want to go out with that same song that we came in with, or how do you want to handle that?
Yeah, the music's great. I think the music's beautiful.
Cool. Well, we're getting ready to do that right now, and I'm getting ready to wrap everything up. Like I said, it was a tremendous conversation. Tish, who do we have next week? I know you got another amazing guest, and
we do. We have
conversations.
We have an amazing lady named Donna Pate, who she's been sober, I believe, for 9 years. But we were talking about how, especially with COVID, there's no support system for people who have tried to get better. The alcoholism rate's gone up, the alcohol sales and that's just alcohol, much less all the other stuff that's out there. So we want to bring to surface some of her experiences, what she's gone through and what she's currently going through now to, stay focused on what she, basically staying sober and handling life straight up. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Should be fascinating. Looking forward to that conversation as well. And like I said, the ladies are invited to pop up not just on other shows that you're doing, but my show as well. And I'm sure that even Nick and some other folks are probably looking like, we need to get them on this show and that show. And we just might keep y'all busy for a while. You're not doing anything else in the theater in the rest of the world. Y'all are so you might have to be added to our family as well and get y'all doing some various things there. So that being said, I'm getting ready to put up this song to wrap everything up, and then we're going to come back at some point later on with other IBM TV programming, as well as, of course, y'all can catch Zach's other show, Funk Music with Zach, on tomorrow, and there's some other great shows as well. So definitely go to the IBM.TV website, both on YouTube, on Facebook, and on the various other platforms, and check out this kind of amazing programming that takes place on a regular basis. But right now, let's check out Sarah Tavares and Born Feeling in order to wrap up this amazing show. I know that Tish has just put together a great show, and I have become not just a producer, but a fan of this show as well. So we're going to put this on to close it out, and then we'll wrap it up, and we'll be back next week with another fascinating discussion.
Deixa a janela do sorriso aberta.
Thank you, Mark.
Coisa boa, boa, coisa desperta. Canta, caia, caia, nos liberta. Caia, caia. Deixa a janela do sorriso aberta. Coisa boa, boa, coisa desperta. Canta, caia, caia, nos liberta. Dá um bom feeling. Bom feeling, yeah, yeah. Bom feeling. Bom feeling, yeah, yeah. Deixa de complicação, deixa de confusão. Liberta a alma dessa